And finally, we come to limiter number 6. We're looking at lung function. Primarily, with lung function, we're looking for little limitations that may be related to structure, as far as how well you can position and how your posture is holding up your frame so that your lung exchange is optimal. We can also be looking at capacity issues related to limitations from things like asthma or different types of conditions that may limit your ability to breathe optimally. We may also look at just little coordination issues where you're breathing fast in inappropriate times or inefficient ways, and then or perhaps not breathing at the highest rate that you can maximize at the higher levels of intensity. So in the lung function area, we're primarily looking for any kind of red flag that you may have a capacity issue. In this context, when we're looking at breathing reserve, we're looking at how the individual, how much air are they moving in and out when they reach their actual highest capacity during the exercise test. And then we predict a value based off of their age and weight and height. And if they're coming into a certain sweet spot, usually between 20 to 40% away from what we call the reserve, below the predicted value, that's kind of a good level we would consider normal, and which is kind of counterintuitive, but if you're getting up close to that value that's predicted during an exercise test, that may be an indication that you're really having to breathe too hard. There's maybe a limitation there to the ability of the air and oxygenating the blood, so the ventilations are too high. With elite athletes, though, we would see what we call the reserve maybe as high as 5% or something close to where the predicted value is. For most individuals, that sweet spot is 20 to 40% away from the predicted. So in this individual, they have a little yellow here because they're at 15%. Doesn't necessarily mean there's any limitation that's going to be significant, but it's something to look at and address. Probably more interesting and potentially something you can add to your overall profile as far as what areas can we optimize to improve efficiency running or cycling related to breathing, is to go ahead and look. In this case, we're looking at a runner, so we're going to go to the CMP treadmill. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom here, and we're looking at the respiratory response. So in this case, we're looking at tidal volume, which is the total. It's kind of with each breath, how much air are you moving in and out. So that's your volume throughout the test. And then we're also looking at the respiratory rate here, so breathing rate throughout the test. So you can see all the way down here to the end, we're getting up to about 41 breathing rate per minute, breaths per minute, I should say. So there's certain norms. Again, these are not necessarily limiters like your VO2 and the consumption rate and that kind of stuff that are really documented to have a significant impact on your ability to perform. But they may be little added, get a little bit of a degree of improvement here, and you could be a little bit more efficient in some respect at doing your activities and exercises and events. So we look here to see there's certain ranges that we expect. Here in zone 2, we kind of expect somewhere a breathing rate around 20 to 26. So we'll look over here and we'll see that this is a little lower, but that's okay. What we don't want to see is hyperventilation going on early on when you're in your zone 2, for example. We usually, in people who are pretty fit, pretty well trained, been putting in some intensity in their training, we're going to see respiratory rate go up in the 50s. So sometimes that can be an indication that either we stopped a little early on the test or they just haven't been putting in that kind of training, and that's an area that will improve. So ultimately, We want to see the rate kind of a normal response. And if there's some hyperventilation or something going on early, maybe look at some ways that they can focus on the way that they breathe. There's even techniques using different devices where you can train that volume and rate appropriate for that zone that you may have a limitation in. Tidal volume, we kind of predict that. Here we're predicting based off of a spirometry test that we did before the exercise test. So they already had a capacity issue. That 69% of the air they blew out was in the first second. So that's usually we expect that around 80%. So they have potentially a capacity. In this individual, they had some asthma in their history. So there is an issue there and a potential limiter there. But now we kind of expect of the tidal volume that they're breathing in and out, we take 80% of this FEV1 and we get 2.4 liters. So they should be hitting 2.4 liters some point during the test here, and they are. They're hitting up as high as 2.9. So this would be normal volume relative to this individual's capacity. So we're always looking back and forth. Where are the capacities? How did they perform during the test? Can we work on some things to maybe improve that efficiency breathing wise? So that could be just, again, coordination of the breathing, or it could be actually opening up the chest, maybe a range of motion postural issue, or a mechanical issue related to strength around holding posture, that type of thing, the core. All can have an impact potentially on opening up the lungs so we can get a little bit more movement of air in and out appropriately. So different things we can address based off of their respiratory response on the cardiometabolic exercise profile.